Noel?
I've had a couple of assignments where I am confident that our consultant can help the client's business, and the client isn't as confident as I am. So I've gone in and done a variety of different things where, give it a try for a couple of days. If you don't think that it's worth it and you're not going to keep the consultant on, don't pay me. Or here's the rate for the first 2 weeks, and if you fire the consultant after 2 weeks, we're done. If you keep them, you've got to increase the rate. And this is, so it's not discounting the rate, it's not giving something away for free. It's basically, here, I'm so confident in this that it's not going to cost you anything unless you keep them. I don't think we've ever had somebody say, no, it wasn't worth it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay. Next question. Regarding the art of questions, what key questions would you ask the founder of an internet-based business who has created the idea but has no organized approach or plan to build the operation? Who wants that one? Richard?
There's a model for that. Every one of these firms out in Silicon Valley, Google and all the rest of them, all have turned to an elder statesman or stateswoman. eBay went to, what's her name? The unsuccessful candidate. All of the companies, they've got these wonderful wizards. They're brilliant. They're brilliant people. And they come up with an idea, and it's just click. And we've all seen that happen. You're seeing it happen now with Groupon and all the others. And invariably, they all get a search firm, okay, little advertisement over here, and they go out and they get big boy or big girl help to run the company.
Okay. If you find yourself, this is a great follow-on question to some of our earlier discussions. If you find yourself in a situation where something you uncover as a consultant would potentially hurt the person that you are reporting to, and who may be the person that hired you, but help the company, how should you proceed? It's a great question. That's a tough one.
Another real life example, I was working for a utility in the South, and I won't tell you where, but we were working in their purchasing and accounts payable and warehousing and so on. And we came across a situation where they were paying their invoices to vendors as they were received, almost the day of. So there was no validation that service was received. There was no validation that the goods were in warehouse, whatever the case might be, and that was the end of it. And I said, well, that's a little strange. It's a little generous. Let's check that out a little bit more. And it turned out that the chief purchasing agent's brother and cousin, and you name it. It was in Louisiana, so he had a big family, and they were all submitting invoices, and companies didn't exist except as P.O. boxes. Well, so the upshot of the deal was that now you have a moral dilemma, but not too big a moral dilemma. And there's clear dishonesty, clear fraud, and so you just you sit down with the guy and say, here's what it is, and he turns whiter than a sheet and then red and so on, and asking what he can do to kind of stuff this, and my answer was literally nothing. You can't do anything. It's going upstairs, and he was fired along with several of his relatives. Just clear, cut and dried.
Okay. Bruce?
Something we didn't talk about at all tonight is whether you have a contract with your client or you don't, a written contract. I would suggest that you do, in most cases, have some kind of a written document that's signed by you and signed by them, and that's a perfect clause to put in there. If during the course of this consulting engagement we discover facts that are relevant in supporting the company that might not be supportive of this project or any of the people from the company that are working on it, would be our obligation to disclose that to upper management or something like that. Put it in there. Now, you may, if the hiring person knows there's something that could get discovered, might not hire you, but better that you're not in that position than you would be. So I'd encourage you to have some kind of a written document, and there's a perfect thing to put in it.
No?
If your consulting assignment is going to present findings of something that you're doing, if it's of that nature, it's a good practice to present any of your data to your core team that hired you and that you work with on a day-to-day basis on the project before reporting it to the organization. You know, if you're working for a division, the president and their subordinates see it before the CEO sees it. Now, you might be under an obligation, like Bruce said, to disclose this. It's what your findings were. It might be in contrast to what they hired you to find, but they hired you to find something, but it doesn't blindside your champion to the organization who's paying your bill when you walk into the CEO and the board and you say, this is what I found, and your team screwed up. You know, you don't want to blindside them like that.
Right.
Let them have input on your findings. Whether do what's professional with the input and best for the client per the terms of the contract, but let them have input on it before you take it upstairs.
So no throwing under the bus.
Right.
Right. Okay. So Joyce, this person read a statistic that 60% of the reason that a client hires you as a consultant is because they like you. Do you think that's true?
Well, I excuse me, this goes back to some of the comments I made earlier about a connection and working together. And so in terms of, is this someone that you can sit across the table from and brainstorm together and accept constructive criticism or challenges in your thinking, I would agree with that. Most of the people I work with, when I interview people and I bring them on my team, I make sure that I like them and that there's a connection. I think that there's enough people out there that you can find people that you would like to work with.
Great. So Bruce, I have a follow-up question for you, and this was written for Bruce Bloom. What qualities do you look for in consultants?
So I really do think integrity is probably the number one quality they look for from somebody. So I don't want you to tell me what you think I want to hear, but I want you to be asking me enough questions so that you can build a knowledge base to tell me, using your experience, your knowledge, and your skills, what would be most beneficial for me. So that's really the thing that I'm most interested in. And I'm also looking for somebody who is passionate about the work that they do, that this isn't just a job, but something that they really like. As Noel said, when somebody comes in to do consulting work who's really engaged, I can feel the difference between somebody's there that's just doing a job. And the last thing I'll say, and I don't always know this, but I look for it in the referrals and recommendations, is that somebody who is better than I am at keeping track of things and getting stuff done on time. So you need to know, so I look for a quality, somebody who can complement the things that I do. I wouldn't hire a consultant who had the same skill sets that I had, because first of all, they'll annoy the hell out of me, and second of all, we'll miss so many things together. So I'm going to look for somebody who's complementary in the kinds of things that they do, so that together we can do a better job than either one of us would do alone.
Good, thank you. So we talked a little bit about whether we should give a discount, whether we should do pro bono. Returning to this idea of fees, what is the range of hourly consulting fees? How do I decide what to quote? Do I do a fixed sum? Do I do a minimum? Do I do a range? What has been your experience with consultants on this? Noel.
I don't know why, but in our world, the math works out like this. If you take what this person would be hired if you hired them as an employee to your organization and take the zeros off of the end of their annual salary, it's what we bill them at an hour. Now, there's a whole mathematical formula that we do to come up with a bill rate, and somehow it 90% of the time comes out to that. If it's a $135,000 a year job, it's $135 an hour bill rate to the client for the consultant. It just seems to work out that way. But there are cases where, under the requirements of Illinois law, I have to pay people time and a half for anything over 40 hours a week. If I know that they're going in, I've got one assignment right now, they know that it's a 70-hour work week for the next 2 months. You know, that person's not going to, we're not going to pay that person 350 grand, you know, annualized out. So we look at, you know, day rates or capped overtime to the client at least. We still have to pay the consultant, but we build it all into what that bill rate is so they make more than the money that they'd ideally look to make, but we're not paying them triple because of the overtime.
Joyce, from a corporate perspective with a large corporation such as Blue Cross, how is that handled? Is it, do you accept bids and they say how much they want to be paid? Do you have standard rates? How do you handle that?
Most of them are, it's a bidding process, and on the larger projects that I've worked on. Then there are some IT projects where it's an hourly rate, and it's based on the years of experience.
All right, Bruce, Richard?
I was going to say, if it's an area where you have strong expertise and you can calculate from your experience how long it's going to take and how much effort, then you're probably better off giving me a project budget. It's going to cost $8,000 for this job. If it's something that where you know you can do the job, but you haven't done this particular job before, you need to support yourself and me, and not giving me a project thing that's going to be either way more expensive for me or way underpriced for you. Because I've dealt with both of those situations where everything got done really quickly and I feel like I got ripped off, although I should be happy that it got done quickly. But more importantly, where the consultant now realizes I've used up all of my allotted time, I still have 25% of the project, I've got to look for more work because I'm not getting paid anymore, and suddenly the project starts to drag out, and the phone calls don't get returned, and it doesn't end up being a happy situation for anybody. Now, sometimes you're going to guess wrong, and that's on you, and if I guessed wrong, that's on me, but I much prefer a project rate because I have a small budget. So, you know, if you're on an hourly and it ends up taking 30% more hours than I thought, I'm firing somebody or, you know, not funding part of my program, not-for-profit program, and I can't afford to do that.
Richard?